Story 1. Ignore bullies and they will leave you alone. When you do that, one of two things is likely to happen. Either they will mess with you more, or they will move to someone else and bully them. If you stand up to bullies, they back down. The earlier in life you put these people in their place, the less likely they will develop their bad behavior as a lifelong practice. Story 2. Going too far on the find your dream job and it'll never feel like work. Stuff really messed me up when I wasn't excited about university assignments and thought I had to change degrees. Story 3. Teaching children not to question things just because someone is older or allegedly wiser is one of the most frustrating things that I see on a daily basis. How is a child supposed to ever develop any individual and nuanced ideas if they can't think for themselves? Story 4. Being discouraged to speak up about illnesses because it makes them seem weird or that something is wrong with them. They talk about it like, you need therapy, which isn't a bad concept, and you probably do need it, but they picture it in such a bad light. Story 5. Nobody cares about children's or teenagers' issues. Well, it's only going to get worse from here. You think school is hard? Have you ever paid a bill? You're just a kid, you can't feel this way. It breeds an emotional disconnect between parents and their kids, and makes kids feel alone in their emotional struggles. Nobody cares because they're not adults and they don't have adult problems. Story 6. There was this one time my sister's Spanish teacher told her off for using vocabulary outside the sheet she'd been given for homework. Their task was to write a short essay introducing themselves in Spanish and use some simple adjectives. She asked me for help, and since I'm quite a bit older than her and know a decent amount of Spanish, I gave her a few interesting adjectives and verbs to use instead of basic stuff like nice and kind or whatever. She comes back after school close to tears and tells me she got scolded for using vocabulary that wasn't on the sheet. Teachers are supposed to encourage learning, not hinder it, right? Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. Just to clarify, I wasn't helping my sister cheat. I just gave her a couple of more interesting words than bland ones like nice and fun. You get me? If not, that's cool too. Story 7. Children do learn about sex at a young age. It just isn't usually in a productive way. I know I did. My own experience. Questions like this are why I believe in being infinitely clear with my kids. You are going to hear total nonsense from other kids. If you hear something you don't understand, come talk to me. You can ask me anything and expect a decent answer. And I would give examples of the total nonsense I had heard as a kid, most of which would result in pregnancy. Son, age 6. Daughter, age 7. Riding home from school. Daughter says, Tiffany said she had sex with my brother, which left me a grand total of 3 minutes to gather my wits before we got home. Okay, do you guys know what sex is? Blank looks. Sex is when you take off all of your clothes and rub privates together. You can make babies that way. Looks of shock and disgust. Do you think your brother had sex with Tiffany? No. I think she was using a really bad way of trying to say she likes him, and maybe she watches the wrong TV shows where if people like each other, they always have sex. Were my kids really ready for a sex talk? No, not really. They didn't care. Did we really need to have one about then? Yes. My job as a parent is to be there to put things that come up in context for them, not run around after them deciding what and when they need to know things. Story 8. Probably not harmful, but in kindergarten, we were prohibited from playing soccer because it was too dangerous. We were kindergartners. We probably would just stand there and kick the ball, not go all out like the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. Edit. What in the world? Thanks for the upvotes, everyone. Story 9. Kids are starting social media so early these days, and I think that is very dangerous because it puts a lot of pressure on the child to attribute their worth to their social media success. I also think parents are way too open with their social media when it comes to their children, and it is totally a violation of the child's privacy, which some parents will never admit. Story 10. Teaching them that it's not okay to fail. Some people need a little more time than others. It's okay to not get something now. Kids should be given more time to process things. Imagine having a poor grade because of a low score from the beginning of the year. How can we show children that it's not pass or fail, it's try and improve? Story 11. That failure is bad. Failing should not be considered as an obstacle but a step in the learning process. Demonizing failure and the stigma associated with it makes many children lose their interest once they fail. Story 12. No backtalk. Many adults use it as, "You are not allowed to challenge what I have to say." It makes sense if it is a cranky toddler being negative for negativity's sake, but suddenly older children cannot question things or raise valid points of their own. Story 13. That complaining is the same as not being grateful. I can't count the number of times growing up when adults basically told me to be quiet whenever I was complaining about something and that I should be grateful that I was born where I was. Sure, I'm glad I wasn't born into some starving African family, but that doesn't mean everything is perfect here and that we shouldn't try to improve things as well. Story 14. You do not have to play with everyone. There is a total lack of social accountability. If Laura is always cheating at tag, it is okay to not let her play. If little Billy throws sand in the sandbox, little Timmy does not have to play with him. Laura and Billy need to learn how to play appropriately. Story 15. Making children hug or kiss someone, usually a relative, with whom they are uncomfortable, is not good. The child may just be grumpy or not want to show affection, or their warning bell sensors could be going off, and they may not know how to communicate that. Plus, forcing them to hug or kiss sends mixed messages about personal and physical boundaries and affection itself. Story 16. Happened to my son in middle school. A kid sucker punched my son. My son then fought back and pinned the kid against the wall, he has long arms, and punched him a few times. The school called me and my wife and told us our son was suspended. We went to the school and they said even though multiple witnesses, as well as the kid, said he threw the first punch, that the school had a zero-tolerance policy so our son would be suspended. We asked what the school believed our son should have done, and they said he should just walk away. We told them that he would not be receiving any punishment at home and that the policy was messed up. Story 17. She's younger than you, just let it go. Can't you be more compassionate? You're the older one here in this situation. She's a little child. She doesn't know any better. Absolutely hate this information that was drilled into me since I was a kid. I think children under the age of 3 are an exception to this though. I was referring to the 5 to 12-year-olds who could get away with stuff because they were younger. Story 18. That everybody is a winner. No. Losing and disappointments are part of life, and they are integral to your growth both emotionally and socially. We have a lot of people who enter the real world who have been told they are deserving of things just because and cannot take rejections and losses in their personal and professional lives with any grace whatsoever. This is also resulting in mediocrity being accepted as a norm because nobody wants to call out ineptitude, while the hard work and dedication being put in by people who do end up in good positions are being played down. It's a little harsh, but it's true. Kids have to learn how to lose before they can truly start to win. That's the only way being gracious in victory will ever come about. Story 19. Kids today are more aware of consequences and their digital footprint than any generation before. Speaking strictly of middle and high school-aged kids, they are extremely well aware of how something can come back to affect them later in life. Some might think this is good and a step towards a more mindful generation, but I disagree. They've just gotten better at hiding it. For the sake of maintaining a happy face and limiting their digital footprint, kids today repress anything that might be perceived as off track. Story 20. This is more at a high school level, but trade schools or learning a trade is often considered a lesser option compared to a standard college degree. Trade schools and learning a skilled trade need just as much emphasis as a college degree. Along those same lines, college or trade school should be treated as a wise investment. Time should be taken for kids and teens to examine how long it will take to repay their schooling and if that degree is worth the money. Especially now, with previous generations living longer and staying in the job market longer. Combined with more and more people graduating with degrees, there is more supply, and the demand is not growing evenly in all areas of expertise. My first ever medal. Story 21. Lack of electronics, then given an overdose of electronics. Things happened to me and now I can't stop playing games. Also, I'm restricting myself now. Story 22. Good will win, evil will be punished. There is no karma. Some people will do all sorts of bad stuff and be successful and happy. Other people will do good and will end up with cancer. Story 23. When people told me not to fight back, I always ignored them. Being the youngest of 5 kids, we always had to stand up for ourselves. One day, when I came home with a bloody nose and a black eye, my parents asked me what happened. I told them I got beaten up. My parents said that if the person who beat me up approached me again, I had their permission to defend myself. The next day, he came up to me and wanted to fight. I defended myself, and as a result, I was suspended for a week. The teachers knew he was bullying me too and did nothing because it was the principal's child. The moral of the story is if someone is bullying you, stand up to them. Story 24. History from a single perspective. I am a history teacher, and I firmly believe one of the most damaging things schools do is teach history from a single perspective, especially a Eurocentric one. It just isn't how history works and causes lots of issues for any person or group who doesn't share that single perspective. Teaching what I call great man history is almost as bad. History was made by more than presidents, inventors, and celebrities. Teaching only about significant figure after significant figure minimizes the impact of the 99.9999999% of the population that isn't super famous. Story 25. Bullies are only bullies because they feel insecure about themselves, and you should sympathize with them. Forget that. If someone is being rude to you, then they don't deserve your sympathy. Story 26. That you can be anything you want in life. Sorry, but this just isn't correct. Poor Eddie, who can't grasp basic division, isn't going to be an astronaut. Story 27. It seems like forcing kids to eat everything off their plate is pretty harmful. It doesn't matter if they're full. They have to clean off their plate, and they can't leave the table until they do. Story 28. Baby Shark. Not that it's inherently harmful, but given the chance, my 5-year-old would watch that for 8 hours a day. What is it about those sharks? Story 29. The oxymorons that parents use and expect you to understand them. Hey mom, do you need help with the dishes? No thanks, I will do it myself. Proceeds to walk away. Oh, now you are not going to help your mom? Don't you know how much I'm going through? You are grounded. Story 30. In Pakistan, most girls are never taught any survival skills. My wife can spend 6 hours shopping for clothes but doesn't know anything about hardware or electrical stuff. Please, teach the girls to be self-sufficient. Teach them how to repair small things at home, at least. My wife can now repair electric sockets and extension cords. My nephew is a selfish little boy who won't let anybody play with his toys or share his food, but throws a tantrum if my niece won't share her things with him. I want to intervene when he does that, but his mother sometimes behaves like an entitled parent. So, I keep my distance but try to correct him when she is not around. Teach your kids to be considerate, but also teach them to stand their ground when someone tries to take advantage of them. Story 31. It's not exclusively about what is taught, but how it is taught. For many children, it seems like many things are taught in absolutes. Boys don't cry, and girls have to behave like little princesses. These things are optional and definitely not the only right way to be. Girls can drive heavy machinery, and boys should be allowed to cry. In fact, crying is healthy. Keep in mind, these are examples for the sake of simplicity. Also, to get back to how things are taught from a totally different perspective. A lecture, as one teacher who is 60 years old and hasn't had an update on how to teach children, standing in front of 30 14-year-olds telling them about mathematics, is not the way to go. There are girls and boys in one classroom, which is enough distraction at this age, and even a window seems far more interesting. I'm not the person who can give you the better option on how to improve everything, but I think how it is done today is not ideal. Story 32. That they don't have bodily autonomy. Simple things like, oh, give your aunt or uncle a hug or kiss, when they're very young and have refused, but parents keep insisting. You're just teaching kids that their body isn't theirs. If a child refuses to give someone a hug, that's their decision. A grown-up should be able to live with that. Story 33. Social acceptance. I feel that I was robbed of a lot of innocence from my childhood, not just because my stepdad was abusive, but because I've been bullied all my life. From a young age, I realized that I was never going to fit in because I was different. To this day, I can't put my finger on what about me is different, but now that I'm 14 and a teenage girl, I'm starting to not care and not let it get to me as much as it did when I was, say, 6. Bullying isn't okay. I know that, and I have been up and down the head teacher's office because of bullying, but nothing ever gets done. To be honest, the only thing in recent years they've done that's actually hurt me was filming me having a panic attack and triggering me during it. They allegedly put it on TikTok. They told me that's what they were doing, and many other people knew about it the day after. I hope now bullying won't be there in 20 years' time, but I know it will never die. Story 34. That they are special and unique compared to everyone else. I'm not saying to destroy a kid's self-esteem, but the longer that bubble isn't popped, the harder it is for them to accept that they are probably just as average as the other 7 billion people. Kids need to know failure and disappointment before they become adults.